What's up, party people?
Hello, hello, hello.
She pauses like we don't do this every fucking week. Um, so for this spooky season, I have a Halloween treat for you. Or maybe it's a trick.
Hmm.
I'll leave it up to you to decide as we sit around the proverbial campfire. I'll regale you with the tale of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal's problematic episode known as the Catskills Crone.
Mm.
Do you know this one?
Mm-mm.
Oh,
I do not.
all right. Let me adjust my hat. Um, as teenagers, Dana and now husband Greg ran rival ghost hunting teams. Greg confesses he had always had a crush on Dana, but she scared him. Don't most women, when you're teenagers, I mean, don't we scare? The, I scared the shit out of the boys when I was a teenager, but it was because I knew more about girls than they did. Um,
That's funny.
uh, See, Greg was raised in an ultra conservative religious home, and they viewed witches and witchcraft as evil, frightening, negative entities. And well, Dana had been a practicing witch since she was 16 years old. So, to Dana Newkirk, marry me, my sister. Um, Greg, whose life path was supposed to lead to Baptist ministry, came to realize he enjoyed Dana's company. And after a few paranormal investigations, learned witchcraft is not evil, but a spiritual practice. Okay, now wait for this one. I wrote this out and then I giggled when I did it. Because then you try to say this fast. Witchcraft is not evil, but a spiritual practice, personal or personified connection to the elements of nature. There's a lot of pee in there. A lot of peas.
Hmm.
A lot of peas. And not the wicked villain Christianity had painted them, us, out to be. And if you think of it truthfully, every mom, dad, chef, we are all kind of witches in our own way because we put offerings from the earth into a pot, into a
Hmm.
cauldron, and we make it to where it's either to bring you health or to nurse you back to health or to nourish your soul. So we all kind of practice witchcraft because most of our recipes are written by people that are no longer on this earth, right?
Right.
After opening the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal Traveling Exhibits, Greg is directed to a subreddit paranormal post that described a very frightening encounter two friends experienced after coming across a wooden statue while hiking in the Catskills Mountains. So on the 9th of January 2016, using a dummy account, wrote, "Last weekend, my friend and I went hiking in the Catskills." I'm not going to read the whole thing because but I'm just going to give you the like basics and then I'll paraphrase from there. But it says, "Last weekend, my friend and I went hiking in the Catskills near Sundown Forest and found this really creepy statue while fucking around in some caves. It has nails in its eyes and a noose around its neck. Looks like it might be old. I don't think it's been there very long, but it's weird because the cave was way off the trail. Someone had a fire in there not too long ago. So basically, this guy, his friend, and him, they go hiking and they come across this effigy, and the
Mhm.
friend's like, "Hey, this is really cool. I'm gonna take it home." And the guy who is writing this is like, "No, dude, that's not cool. You need to leave shit where you find it." Which that's how every good horror movie and true crime story starts. I should have left it where you found it.
Right.
But so he goes on to say the statue really wigged me out, but my buddy decided to take it home with him, even though I told him not to. A couple days later, his friend gets a hold of him and says, I keep hearing knocking and like I'm petrified. And so they're they're directed to Greg Newkirk in the Reddit. So somebody who knows Greg gets a hold of him. It's like, hey, you need to read this story and see what you think about it. And so he and Dana read it together. She offers them cleansing rituals and prayers, but by the time that all of this reaches this guy who is never named, he's like, I don't want this thing in my house. I'm just going to send it to you. And on the 10th of February, the Newkirks received the effigy in the mail. Greg immediately thought of the archetype of the crone. The crone is described as an old woman who may be characterized as disagreeable, malicious, or sinister in manner, but enveloped with magical and or supernatural associations that can make her either that can make her either um, very agreeable or can make her very intrusive. So it's she's either seen as somebody who comes as a blessing or someone who comes as not so much of a blessing, as more of a curse. In the Wicca and neo paganism belief system, the crone symbolizes the dark goddess. When the moon is dark, it represents the end of a cycle, as the light goddess is the beginning of the cycle, and the day goddess is the middle of the cycle. So, this is why those of us who do practice a Wicca belief is we give our morning affirmations to our light goddess for bringing us another day, and um, we offer to nourish our bodies through the goddess in the day and as the middle cycle, and in the end we just thank her for giving us that day as we end up our round out our day. The crone represents the ending part in the circle of life, not good, but not evil either. As we all know, in the circle of life, there are things that are amazing. The growth of a living being, an animal, a plant that grows to maturity. And then, of course, as the circle of life comes to its full, is this is when we have death or we have loss of. But this effigy arrived with several nails placed through the crone's eyes and a twine noose around its neck.
Hmm.
Greg takes photos of the effigy and place it in their collection with no more thought. That is until the Newkirks heard a loud bang coming from their home office. Greg notices the couple's cat hiding petrified as he opens the office door because, my gorgeous ghoul, what do animals see that sometimes we don't?
Ghosts.
Ghosts, spirits, energy. Um, my dogs are very lazy, so if they see anything, I probably have seen it first. Just be real. Um, so Greg steps inside and he feels something crunch under his foot. Horrified, Greg raises his foot, and under his shoe is the plastic representation of Jesus Christ, ripped off the cross hanging on the wall.
Interesting.
And in the chair under the cross sat the crone. Now, when Greg describes this, he says that the cross is just kind of nailed up there, like somebody would have to take their hand and hold it to pull the symbol of Christ off. And it was ripped off with such force that one of the plastic arms still hung nailed to the cross. And then the other two nails, where his other hand and his foot would be, were completely missing. The amount of force, quote, needed to leave the cross hanging but tear off Jesus was very directed at this religious symbol. Its anger very present. In March, the Newkirks place a trail camera in their office to attempt to catch whatever entity was playing havoc in their home. During that night, Dana is awoken by the sound of a door creaking. She opens her eyes to what can only be described as a living nightmare. An old hag, shrouded in darkness, stepped through the doorway, observing the couple for a split second before backing out. Dana, walking into their living room, notices two large wet spots on the top of their couch, but none leading to or from the room. Greg discovers, watching the trail camera footage, that he can see shifting shadows. So, kind of like, same with what's going on, kind of with what I'm doing with my hand, is he
Mhm.
could see very, very slight movement. So he starts watching the footage frame by frame in slow motion. Ever so slightly, unassisted, the crone moved. It would move forward and then it would move back. The Newkirks decide the best course of action was to address the crone because, yes, when we bring evil things into our house, let's have a conversation with it. That's a great idea.
Right.
And parents of teenagers may know this on a daily basis. Um, the Newkirks explained to the effigy they were happy to share their space, but this would require the entity is to remain docile. As if answering the Newkirks' request, the sound of rushing water fills the house, but no water is found running.
Hmm.
And if you've got a basement, there is nothing more terrifying than hearing water and you can't find it because
Right.
you got structural damage somewhere.
Yeah. That'd be
That's
awful.
that's a real nightmare. So while looking for the running water, Dana and Greg hear three sharp, loud bangs back in the living room. When they go back into the living room, The crone is no longer on the table where Greg had left it. A quick look around, and Greg noticed the crone laying under the TV stand. Without a second thought, Greg on his hands gets down on his hands and knees and reaches under the TV stand, but immediately becomes startled by Dana's strained voice. He looks over his shoulder to see Dana holding up their extremely large television.
Huh.
The Newkirks felt the effigy was threatening them, so they returned the crone to the pillowcase and locked it into a wooden box. Okay, but I've got questions about this. I've got about the whole TV. Okay, I've lived in California 50 years. In various parts of California, we have earthquakes. We have had earthquakes since 1918 destroyed San Francisco. Since in the 80s, it destroyed San Francisco. So our
Right.
shit is nailed to the wall. It is screwed in. Your stands, your desks, your televisions. Like nothing comes off. Granted, they're not in California, but why was this not nailed down? Like, are they sure that the crone pushed that TV over?
Right.
I'm gonna pretend that's scary noises of demons. Come on. Yeah, there's. I just let the old crone in talking about her. Relax, relax, Bailey. Okay, you're too big. Okay,
You asked for it.
I did because I heard him scratching and I didn't ignore it. Ugh, I just got a big old face kiss from a lab. We have a big old chocolate lab. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm a little hard pressed to actually believe. I mean, maybe he was just clumsy and he knocked the TV stand as he was getting the crone out. Who knows?
Right.
But okay, scene change. The 8th annual Michigan Paracon rolls around where the Newkirks display their traveling exhibits. Now, didn't you go to Paracon?
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool, yeah.
Yeah, I liked it.
So while there, a mysterious man kept coming to their booth asking to see the crone, to which Greg kept putting the man off. So, okay, dude, you advertise that obviously they advertise their traveling museum, they advertise
Right.
what exhibits are going to be. If you tell people you have a crone and you show them pictures of this thing with a noose around its neck and like a whole bunch of nails in its eyes, how can you expect people not to come up and be like, I want to see it, I want to see the crone, and you be like, nah, it's too
Right.
evil, it's too evil, I'm not, I can't take it out, we shouldn't have brought it. Finally, Greg gives in and opens the box. And just like Pandora's box, once the crone's box was opened, hell came from inside.
Hell came out.
Oh, yeah. Simultaneously, the presenter directly across from the Kirkpatrick's exhibit has a large cup of soda. Completely, nobody was around it, fall over and destroy thousands of dollars in this exhibitor's merch.
Wow.
I don't need a supernatural presence to knock my shit over. I do it on a daily. So, but we're going to give her the benefit of the doubt that it was the crone. But now here, this is where I could see a supernatural element, because all of the chandeliers all the way down this one aisle that directly faced, here we're doing this again here,
Mm-hmm. You're
directly faced the exhibit, starts to swing. And it's not like a, oh, the fan's going kind of swing. It is like somebody has grabbed a hold of it and has just flung them.
oh.
And while this is happening, a gentleman that was sitting in a chair at the very end of this aisle begins to have a grand mal seizure. And from reports, he was not a diagnosed epileptic. But more frightening than just a seizure, like if you've never been around a seizure, they're scary as shit.
Yeah. They are pretty
Um,
uncomfortable.
yeah. But to make this guy's poor experience just 10 times worse, he begins to bleed profusely from his nose and his mouth.
Oh.
I hope they got him first aid fast, because
Right. That's a
that's
bad.
yeah. Um, because I mean that's head trauma. If it's
Right.
pouring from your nose and your mouth, that's head trauma. And if it had been coming from his ears, that there's your trifecta.
Yeah.
The mysterious man dropped to his knees, crying and begging for the crone to be locked back up. Well, what happened? You got what you asked for.
Right. You wanted it out.
Don't ever mess with a crone's box. I don't, well, maybe. I mean, maybe that was a problem. Nobody messed with her box in a long time. So there goes another restricted 18 label I got to put on this. Um, Greg decided it would be safer to display a 3D printout of the crone in place of the original effigy. Yeah, you think? Yeah.
Yeah.
And and for anybody, like when you see a 3D printout, like a picture of one, they're really impressive. But when you actually get to hold one and mess with one, they're
They
so
feel
cool.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they're cool. Um, Turning to a good friend and fellow paranormal enthusiast, Jason Goen. While attempting to scan the crone, Jason and his wife hear running water upstairs and go to investigate. From the kitchen across their carpeted walkway, up their carpeted stairs, and into their son's nursery are puddles, and not
Hmm.
just feet prints, like somebody poured a bucket of water. But
Okay.
nobody was in the house with them. They have a security system.
Interesting.
And even more frightening was the stale smell, like a bog, like it smelled like a swamp in their son's nursery. And from the the little, wheels, whatever, what are they?
Yeah.
Mobiles, the
Yeah.
mobiles. It dripped this just very thick, very rancid smelling water. And thankfully, Jason says that their infant son was actually with his mother-in-law, so he was very happy that he wasn't in his bed. Yeah, I got to agree. Jason tried to reassure his wife that everything was okay, but she demanded that Jason return the effigy to the Newkirks. So, what do? On Halloween 2017, from a hotel room, neutral ground, as they said,
Mm-hmm.
Jason and the Newkirks do a live stream to 3D scan the crone and also to do an investigation utilizing the and our friend at She Haunts Gina. Please forgive me if I mispronounce this. You don't need to go out. You'll get in trouble. The Essex method. Essex?
That sounds right to me.
Yeah. Dana, with headphones, blindfolded, plugs into a spirit box while Jason and Greg ask the effigy questions. When the crone is moved, Dana calls out. Now, I'm going to just like do a timeout here real quick because I've seen a live scan, or not live scan, live stream of Gina's the paranormal group, investigation group she belongs to, All Star. I believe it's All Star Paranormal. I know it's All Star. And I've seen them do this. It is extremely impressive. If so, yeah, it's actually, if you're not a believer in like spirits, paranormal, this can sway your ideology because it's you're completely sensory. You're deficient
Sensory
in, yeah,
deprivation.
deprivation. And the only thing you have that's going through your ears is what you're hearing from the spirit box. Um, so when the crone is moved, Dana calls out motion. When being scanned, Dana calls out choking, hurt, Eden, think, maybe. With Jason reassuring the crone, none of those would happen. Dana experiences back, like right above where her lungs are, thigh, like someone was holding, putting pressure on her thighs, and throat pain as if she were being choked.
Hmm.
When asked if they can scan the crone, Dana says a man and a woman are arguing. So the voices that she's hearing are very definitively male and very definitively female. And she discovers that they're not actually answering Jason or Greg's questions. They're actually arguing with each other,
Ah, okay.
which she said is something in her whole experience of doing this type of investigation she had never experienced. And she said it was kind of frightening actually to hear this, but it was also intriguing to hear this conversation. So as the investigation continues, the group discover the name Bidum, and the female spirit says she's being held captive. And when they say by who, the word Bidum comes up again. Jason noted that all of his experience, he had never had a perfect scan. So he said every time he went to do a 3D scan, they'd have to do it several times because because whatever they were scanning wouldn't come out exactly right.
Hmm.
But the crone did everything except the nails in her eyes and the noose around her neck.
Huh.
The crone conveys to the trio that it wants to be returned to the cave in the mountains.
Yeah. Okay.
The female entity expressed to be free from Brother Bidum. When Jason tells the female entity nothing could keep her prisoner, the male entity would say, shush, shush, very loud, very authoritative. So she would say, I want to be free. And the male voice would immediately say, shush, shush.
Hmm.
And Jason continued to reassure the crone, that nothing could have power over her. Nothing was holding her to that effigy. And she continuously said, "Brother, bid him." So while Jason is addressing and scanning, Greg takes a second to look up what the root word of bidum was, and it means prayer.
Okay.
Dana decides, due to the fear in the female entity's EVP voice and the anger towards the crucifix, that the crone had been bound to the effigy by a religious baddie. By, maybe she was just kind of hanging out, doing her little witchcraft in the woods, and this religious guy decides, no, you're not going to do that. So he enslaves her into the crone. While reviewing the completed scan, Jason notices the crone's head looked like it was cocked back. So it looked like kind of when you cock back the hammer of a gun. There's the space. So the effigy's head looked like it was cocked back, kind of like a Pez dispenser.
Okay.
But coming from her neck was two very, very identifiable fingers
Okay.
that were reaching. They were reaching out towards the scan.
Hmm.
This visual reminder that something was trying to escape was enough for the Newkirks to reseal the crone back into its wooden prison. I don't blame you.
Right.
A year after promising to return the effigy to its Ellenville mountain cave, the Newkirks meet with an FX artist and fellow paranormal investigator by the name of Tyler Strand. I For some of you guys that name may go, oh, and for me it didn't. It did nothing for me. So sorry. So they decide, since he is an FX creator, like he can build models and scales and things, that they want to have a safe, harmless replica of the crone so that they can put her back into her Catskills cave. So as they're going, they are traveling. They come to a village that's at the bottom of the Ellenville mountain, having a very strong Ukrainian presence. So most of the town folks, kind of like most of the town folks where I'm from or where I'm at, are Portuguese. In this small town, Ellenville, most of the descendants were Ukrainian and had escaped, from Russia, from and just devastation. If you don't know a lot about the Ukraine, it's not a prospering kind of. They're very war ravaged, and yeah. Um, so while they're in this village, Greg begins to research the effigy and discovers some interesting facts about the crone. One of the most famous Ukrainian folklore stories talks about a goddess of water, fate, and justice by the name of the Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga in Russia is known as the Mokash. Neo pagan belief argues that symbols of Christianity are actually false gods, and they choose to worship the old gods and the old ways. Um, just public service announcement, party people. Early on Wednesday, we you worship at whatever altar you want. We don't. Mm-mm, we have no opinion on it. We have our own opinion, but we don't care. Um, what we do care about are 5-star ratings. So worship at that altar for us. But sadly, Greg meets with a Russian Ukrainian historian who tells him that there's no real history of the crone effigy, that they were actually just pretty pictures. That they kind of just they decided they wanted to um, create folklore, and that's okay.
Okay.
They wanted to have something to pass down to their children. Um, the historian did say though that the nails and the noose are not from the neo pagans. That Mokosh is always shown with a bucket of water or a ball of yarn. And the ball of yarn is the symbol for fate. You string out fate or you roll it back in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Newkirks found the twine and the nails actually came from Walmart,
Oh,
but that doesn't mean that somebody went shopping at Walmart and did that. Um, but it was something common. It wasn't like ancient, so it was something kind of
right.
common. Um, so it was an old statue um, with new add-ons, and Greg Newkirk explains that the hands of the crone looked as if she should have been holding something, but that it had been either torn away.
Okay.
Mokosh scared people because she often stole children by legend. But this again was a Christian belief and was not uh, based in what the neo pagans would practice. The historian said that Mokosh was actually a live and let live deity, that she was truly not evil or good. She was kind of in between. So it was something
Right.
they kind of already knew. Um, Tyler, while handling the crone for measurements, grabbed his seismometer and uh, for our friends that are not paranormal investigators, because I did look this up, that's what registers electricity when there's not. So if
Okay.
something if something is charged, like electrically charged or magnetically charged, or is zapping power, this meter will show it. And the crone registered off the meter,
Oh,
and
wow.
they were outside, and there was absolutely nothing metal, electrical around them. And the only metal was the nails in the eyes, but with no electrical source, it should not have gone off like that.
Hmm.
Um they kind of felt like Tyler's handling was being tolerated because it was being returned. So they felt that the effigy was being a little bit more agreeable because they were at the base of the mountains of where they were going to replace her, put her back.
Right.
Um, Dana and Greg and Tyler take the crone up the mountain. And as they're going up the mountain, they decide to unbind her. So
Oh.
whatever the female spirit that was bound um, to the crone, they wanted to let her go. Um, and what should have been an easy hike, these three were very skilled, experienced hikers. It was not an extremely not an extreme incline. It wasn't rocky. It wasn't dangerous in any way. Um, it just felt very heavy to them. The air became thinner, and they weren't even really going up to a high elevation.
Hmm.
Um, Mokosh was actually kidnapped by the- Theos, Thelos. It always sounds better when I practice beforehand. Um, who is the king of serpents and also known as the god of the underworld. Perrin, Mokosh's husband, had to chase Thelis down to get her back. And the so the folklore went that that Thalis had hidden Mokosh in his body. And um so yeah, so he had to slice him open and to pull her out. And
Oh, damn.
so girls, let me just say, if your partner will not chase the king of the underworld who's got snakes all over him uh, and slice him open to get you out, is he even really that interested in you?
Probably not.
Greg felt symbolically that they were doing the same. They were taking Mokosh back to her resting place. This is their belief. Um, so they get to the base of the cave,
Mm-hmm.
and to do the unbinding ritual, Dana creates a circle after dark of black salt. And this is to ward off any negative energy that may try to enter um, their their circle while they're unbinding the crone. Dana, who also ran a virtual coven, starts to hear all of their phones simultaneously, her phone, Tyler's phone, Greg's
Going
phone,
off.
going
Damn.
off. That on the internet, all of her coven members were doing the same ritual. Um, for some, they believe there is power in numbers and they do choose a coven. Some of us are taught that there is actually, it's kind of like the old saying of there's too many chefs in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
too many,
Hens in the hen house.
yeah, witches in a coven may not all have the same ideology and the same, like, not have the same goals, I guess you could say. Um, as the ritual progressed, Greg felt extremely overwhelmed because as Dana did the ritual, it was his job to remove the nails from the crone's eyes. And they were hard. He says they shouldn't have been this hard to take
Hmm.
out, but they were. But with each nail, that was removed, Tyler and Greg began to feel their fear lift. By releasing the crone and binding the negative energy to the nails and removing the noose, burning it, created a pop sensation around them. So it was as if the atmosphere popped. I would liken it to maybe a sonic boom. Um, the crone was now just a piece of wood, and the heavy atmosphere was lifted. On 10/26, 2018, the next morning, they buried the crone with a moment of silence. They said a few words and then started their descent down the mountain. The Newkirks felt it was their own fears that were coming through because, as Dana explained, that when they would receive a quote cursed object, the person who donated it to the museum would say they felt their curse was lifted, they were no longer afraid, they didn't have this trauma response. And Dana said that it was probably because they had gotten rid of whatever was causing, that fear. So it's not in their presence anymore, so they're not afraid of it anymore. um I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think maybe they were responding to trauma with the crone, or do you think it truly was
I
something
think it
bound to it?
I think it was probably just something that they, conjured up in their heads, and, mass hysteria. One person started saying it and saying this was happening, and I'm feeling this, and I'm thinking this, and then everybody else is like, "Oh, I think I am too." And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of spiraled downhill from there.
That's how a lot of very good women, very strong women, lost their lives in Salem in 1692. 3 years later, doing research with Tyler, they discover it's not the harmless deity of Mokai. It was actually an evil called the Kikimora. The swamp Kikimora was used to discourage people from purchasing a property by a prospective landowner, or someone who wanted to buy it probably a lot cheaper than the person was asking. Um, so I could kind of, can you imagine, like, you want to get into a great neighborhood, the best schools, all of this, and they're asking, let's just say 500,000 for a house, and you only want to pay 3. So what do? You toss in the Kikimora, and the Kikimora goes in and she invades the property. She leaves wet feet prints everywhere. She brings with her misery, and she's almost impossible to get rid of. She was also known to knock travelers off the road as
Oh,
well and steal their children. So, and it was said that the Kikimora used these children um, in spells and for her own groceries. So, um, everything Jason and the Newkirks had experienced. So all of this, is sounding um, very familiar to them.
right.
Mokosh was adapted by Christianity to become Saint Pitka, who is celebrated on the end of October when they unbound the crone. So on the 25th of October is St. Pitka's festival. And so the different branches of Christianity celebrates this by carrying the saint and having a big festival in her honor. Um, Everything had lined up perfectly for them to complete the ritual, beginning with the trek the day before, and then the unbinding the night in between, to St. Pitka's celebration the following day. Greg and Dana feel they were called by this bound goddess, Molkosh, to release her and experience spiritual growth. Incidentally, Tyler was able to recreate the crone perfectly without the nails and noose, of course. So, party people in this Halloween season, have I given you a treat to enjoy, or have I played a trick on you? So,
Interesting.
hit us up in the comments, Facebook, Instagram, um, YouTube, TikTok. Tell us if you think, was this a Halloween season treat of St. Pitka? Or did your gorgeous ghouls play a nasty little trick on you? Guess you have to find out. Catch us on the other side.
Bye. Brum, 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 brum.